Hey guys, what's up? So in today's video, we will be going over the topic of how to add and subtract mixed numbers. So first off, let's go over some steps that we have to do when we're adding and subtracting mixed numbers. Step one, we need to line the numbers vertically. Okay. Step two, we need to find the common denominator, which is sometimes called renaming the fraction. Remember that when adding and subtracting fractions, the only way to do this is if you have the common denominator, okay? So step three, once you find the common denominator, now you can add and subtract the fraction, which is by adding or subtracting the numerator, and then the denominator stays the same. And secondly, if you're dealing with mixed numbers, then after you do the fraction, you add or subtract the whole number. Finally, you reduce the fraction. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Okay, let's look at this example here. 3 2/5 plus 2 1/2. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is write it out vertically. So right here, 3 2/5 and 2 1/2. Okay, so once that's written out, we realize that the common denominator of the fraction is 10. The denominators are different. This one is the 5 and the other one is the 2. So we have to find the common denominator, and we find that it is the 10. So we figure that out by multiplying it by 5 over here and the fraction by 2 here to get 3 4/10 and 2 5/10. So once we get that, now we can add the numerators 4 and 5 and to get 9. Then we then add the whole number, which is 5. 3 and 2 makes 5 and 9/10. So that is how we get the answer. Okay, so that is just us going over the steps there. Let's look at another example. Okay, 9 7/8 plus 8 3/4. Step one, we write the problem out vertically, and we compare the denominator. Do we have the same denominator? No, we don't. So that means we cannot add these fractions. So we have to find the same common denominator. So step two, we find the same common denominator, and that is 8. And we get that by multiplying the fraction by 2 here and by 2 here. So now we have 6/8 and 7/8. So 9 7/8 and 8 6/8. And so since we have the same common denominator, we can add these two numbers. 7 and 6 makes 13 and 8. So 13/8, which is an improper fraction. And once you change it to a proper fraction, it becomes 18 5/8. Okay, 18 5/8. So that is how you do that. And we will also do another example of subtraction with borrowing. Okay, so step one, we need to write the problem vertically. So 17 1/3 minus 6 2/3. So we write it out vertically. Okay, and the next thing we check for is a common denominator. And yes, we do have common denominator here. So technically we can do the subtraction. But in this case, 1 minus 2, we can't do that. So we need to make this number up here bigger than the number down here, so the numerator. So to do that, we take 17 and we borrow from this whole number, 17, okay? And so we borrow from 17, which is in this step right here. So we borrow 17, this turns into 16, and we borrow 1 from it, and we write it as 3/3, okay, to keep the denominator the same. So then we can add the numerator, and this fraction becomes 4/3, okay? So now we have 16 4/3, and we can do the subtraction properly here. So 4 minus 2 is 2. the denominator stays the same. And now we can do the subtraction correctly. And now we subtract the whole number. 16 minus 6 is 10. Right there. That's how you borrow fraction. The trick with this is to remember that when you're borrowing from the whole number, to keep this number, the 1 that you're borrowing from the whole number, to make it as a fraction and keep it as the same denominator as the denominator that you have here, so you can add straight ahead without doing any further finding of a common denominator. Okay, so keep that in mind. So let's do another example here. So, and this example shows us how to deal with problems where there is no fraction, there's just a whole number. Okay, so 9 minus 5 and 2/3. Okay, so the first thing we do is we still have to line up the fractions vertically. Okay, and remember that the 9 here, there's no little fraction over here, so that might be confusing to you, but just remember to line up the whole number to whole number, and then the fraction to the fraction. And even though it's a blank spot here, just write it like that. Okay, so now when we have it written out like this and we're trying to do the subtraction problem, we can't, because there's nothing for this fraction, the 2/3, to subtract from. So that means there's a 0 over here. So we need to borrow from this 9 to make that work. So let's borrow from this 9. Okay, so let's do that. So 9, 5/3. And let's borrow from this 9. This becomes an 8. And we'll write the one that we borrowed from that as 3/3. Okay, because remember 3 divided by 3 is 1, so that's equal to the 1 that you borrowed from over there. So now we can do this fraction. 3 minus 2 gives you 1/3, and then 8 minus 5 gives us 3, okay, as the whole number. So that is your answer to the fraction here. So I think the key point in this is for you to write your fraction vertically, knowing that there's no fraction part here, and then you have to borrow from the whole number to make a fraction. Keep the denominator the same as the one down here so that you can go straight to the subtraction without having to find any common denominator. Okay? All right, I hope that helps. And remember to look in the Google Docs with the links to all of these files. Okay? Bye-bye.